training for Linchpin for May 1st, 2025. Got all the questions kicked up. I got some caffeine next to me. So I think we're going to be off for a good start here. As always, we'll kick it off with some shout outs and then we'll get into the questions. Hopefully these things are working. Let me know if they're not. Okay. First shout out. This is for Christine H regarding her back squat. And she says, Whew, I really pushed myself today. And she got a back squat of 215 pounds, new 1 rep max, which was, by the way, an increase of 40 pounds from her last back squat, which is crazy. And that scored her a level 86 on Beyond the Whiteboard. So congrats. All right, next one here. Let's see. Hold on one second. All right, next one here, another back squat one because we've been squatting. This is from Josh D. This is crazy. Melanie, how are you? So Josh D just posted this video and asked if I could reshare it, and I did. So it's on the Linchpin Instagram and my personal Instagram of him back squatting 565 pounds. That's absolutely preposterous. So he's obviously a very, very strong dude. But what's really cool is he says, I'm most proud of the fact that I was basically recently able to run a mile the other day. It wasn't fast, but I haven't been able to do that in years. Loving Lynchpin so far. So that's cool. Obviously got monster strength, and now he's getting out there for the mile. So good stuff. And the final shout out today. This is from Jake C. And I think this one will resonate with a lot of people. He said, This is why I started Lynchpin. My daughter was born 10 days early on Monday. She is beautiful and healthy. In January, I started this program because I knew I wasn't going to have the energy I wanted for my kids. I've lost 20 pounds so far, and I'm not looking back. Very cool. So that's a great why. I think will resonate with a lot of people. So, okay, let's dive into the questions today. The one that I labeled this one as, which is VO2 Max versus fitness. That's going to be a cool one. VO2 Max is just one of those things that I think everybody's drawn to. It's science, right? Can be measured. There's, hoses and laboratories and things like that. I'm going to save that one for the end. So once it's posted later on, you can fast forward to that if you want, because it involves me doing a little bit of reading. And so if you stuck around that far, I guess you want to hear it. But we'll dive into the other questions right now. So, from Val L, early morning crew or late night crew? My husband and I have been doing the workouts together for the last few weeks. While I used to do the workout solo in the afternoons, he burns the candle at both ends between his day job and running his own small business on the side, plus carting the kids to various evening activities. He typically does his small business work from 6 to 7 a.m. and sometimes in the evenings. So lately it's been 8:30 p.m. or 9 p.m. before we get a chance to work out. Is there a benefit of doing 5 a.m. versus a 9 p.m. workout? Both mean a lack of sleep. So, mm, is there a benefit? I think it's how you define that. So, early morning workout versus late night. Early morning, great. You get it out of the way. But yeah, like you said, either one's a lack of sleep. But you get it out of the way, the day's done, you can check that box off the list. Great. Most people are not going to perform optimally super early in the morning. So that's just going to be one of the concessions that you have to make. Is it ideal? Probably not, but life doesn't care about what's ideal. If that's the only time you have to work out, better to do that and have, a relatively speaking suboptimal performance than to never work out again. Now, working out later on at night, depending upon as long as you're not exhausted by that point of the day, your body is up and awake and has been for a while. So you'll probably have a better performance, lift more, run faster, and all that later in the evening. But depending upon how you're wired as a human being, some people, if they do that, their body gets so amped up that they struggle to sleep that night. And then it screws them over in the long run because they're more tired. So it just depends upon, does working out late at night mess up your rhythm and now sleep becomes a struggle? That's no good. Then it might be worth for you to get up earlier in the morning, have a little bit less optimal performance, but still get that sleep. Because if you're going to get less sleep no matter what, working out in the morning or in the evening, and one of those two disrupts that small window of sleep that's already very precious. One of those two disrupts it more, that's no good. So I might base my decision largely off that. Shannon D. Looking to increase the good old strength and conditioning IQ some more. Can you explain the benefits of doing box jump overs versus standard box jumps? My husband will continue just doing regular box jumps until I can explain the difference and the point of the over part. My guess was coordination and different stabilizing muscles used to step down at a side or crossover angle. Please enlighten me. So, I actually think both things are right at the same time for regular box jumps versus box jump overs. Yes, you're pivoting, you're rotating. That's good stuff. Undoubtedly. I can't argue that. That's good stuff. Do I think that's why that movement exists in our psyche currently? No, I don't think so. And I also think if you had somebody doing all the other things that we do for physical fitness, from running to sprinting to, shuttle sprints to double unders, single unders, running step crossovers, clean, like all the stuff that we do, and you measure these two people, and the only difference in their training regime was one did regular box jumps and the other did box jump overs, you would have absolutely no difference in those two people's physical ability. I don't. That's my opinion. Obviously, I can't measure that really. That's my opinion. I don't, and I'll take that to the grave. I don't think there'd be any difference at all. I think largely where the box jump over comes from is there are things that just had to pop up due to the judging standards of competition, you know? And I think box jump overs are one of those things where if somebody's doing box jumps fast in a competition, sometimes they want your whole foot on the box. Sometimes they don't want your whole foot on the box. Sometimes you have to have a 2 foot landing. Sometimes if your foot goes tap tap, that's okay. Sometimes it's a disqualification. If somebody's cycling really, really fast, um, it can be tough to see if they fully extended their hips and they fully locked out their knees. Maybe they're doing that as they're jumping off the box to rebound to the next one. It becomes this blur, and all of a sudden, so and so in position 290 millionth complained that this person beat them on the leaderboard. And sometimes these standards come up because of fitness competitions. And I think that is where the box jump over just makes it easy. Like, get from one side of the box, get on the other side of the box. We're not going to sweat too much what happens in the middle. You go from one side, you go to the other, there's your rep. So I think that's largely where that came from. It's kind of the same deal with like hand release push-ups. Yes, you're taking, the tension off and then retensioning, tension off, tension, like I get that. But truth be told, would you be perfectly fine doing regular push-ups for the rest of your life? Yes. Are they a nightmare in a competition? Yes. And release push-ups. Ta-da! Now, both are wonderful and we'll work both in. But again, there are some things that, just you can kind of see where they came in. Like I've said before, I will also take it to the graves that knees to elbows are superior to toes to bar and darn near anything that you can think of, but they are a nightmare to judge in a competition. So you're not going to see a knees to elbow. You're going to see a toes to bar because you can just feet go behind the plane and the rear, and you get a tap at the top. Great. And so that would be my take on the two box room styles that you mentioned there. Oh, caffeine. Okay. Maria G. Still working on my first strict pull-up, but it feels like the holy grail of fitness. And not having one makes you feel less than. First of all, let's go ahead and pump the brakes right there. I get what you're saying. It is actually a really incredible and awesome achievement to get a strict pull-up. It is. But don't feel less than if you don't have one yet or you're on the path or any of that stuff. I have an old elbow injury and I really have doubts if I'll get it. What is something similar enough that's holy grail status, worthy to test myself and mentally give myself a boost um, that I'm not so far behind? Hope that makes sense. It does make sense. And I guess without knowing more about what's going on with your elbow, is it just during the pulling motion? Because what's coming to my mind is you could do a ring row like Maybe get your feet on a box and row the rings to your chest. So you're touching your chest. You're doing like a static hold and try to accumulate a 30-second static hold would be really great, or if that's too hard, knock it down for a goal. If it's too easy, pump it up for a goal. A chin over the bar hold, but again, you need a strict pull up to do that. But the ring row one you could do, and if the feet in the box right now is too demanding for you, take the box away, put your feet on the ground so your body's at an angle, rings to your chest, static hold, and then slightly increase the difficulty of that. If the pulling is challenging, you could also just work up to a arms locked out, static hold, a dead hang hold on the pull-up bar with your arms extended, and just see what you can get. Goals would be work up to 30 seconds, then 45, then a minute, then 75 seconds, then 90 seconds. See if you can get eventually, north of a minute, uh, dead hang, just static hold on the pull-up bar. That'd be a great one for you to do as well. But, you the best, so if you can continue working towards that strict pull-up, hopefully you do, and hopefully you get some success because you say that you are still working on it, so hopefully that means it's not, totally out of the question yet. Alright, again, I'm saving the VO2 Max question for the end here. Eric C, what fiction books are you reading these days? So I finished within the last couple months, I finished 1984, really enjoyed that. I'm probably one of the few people that hadn't read that. I then moved on to Project Hail Mary, and this is like some science fiction stuff that historically I'm not a science fiction person, but it's been really enjoyable. Project Hail Mary was a great book. I really enjoyed it. It was one of those ones that I was sad when it was over. Then I did Ender's Game, another science fiction one. Really enjoyed Ender's Game as well. And now I'm on one not science fiction. It's called Demon Copperhead. And all of these have been recommendations from all of you wonderful people. And man, Demon Copperhead is great. I think it won like best nonfiction the last couple of years. It took me, it didn't grab me right away, but I gave it a little bit of time and then it grabbed me 100%, and I'm really enjoying it. So that's what I'm reading right now. Let's see. Alexandra S. Two questions. What's your thought process behind when you program lunges for distance versus when you program them for a set number of reps? So I think what she's talking about is a set distance would be we're going to do 3 rounds, and each round has 20 meters of walking lunges, versus you might see another workout that's X number of rounds. Instead of saying it's 10, 15, or 20 meters of lunges per round, it could be 25 steps. So one's I set the distance, one I set the steps. Truth be told, I'm aware for most people how many, on average, if it's 20 meters of lunges, how many steps that is. And obviously, if I do X number of actual physical steps, how many meters would that come out to? Like I have the two can exist in my mind, and I will usually choose, I'll have a specific goal distance that I want the athlete to cover and how many steps I should take for them to get. And then whether I choose the set distance or the number of steps, I'm going to get to the same endpoint, but it's usually based upon the other things in the workout, the number of rounds and the rep ranges of the other movements. What makes the numbers work in a more beautiful fashion? I won't I won't go for beautiful numbers over the actual prescription and dosing that I want. That's more important than the actual numbers. But I can usually find to make the two harmonize where, you know, X number of steps is this beautiful interplay with the other loadings and rep ranges in the workout. And that's what we go with. Or should it be a distance? But again, it's going to get whichever one I choose, it's going to accomplish the same goal. Hopefully that makes sense. Any recommendations on how to not tear your hands during kipping pull-ups? Is tearing hands a result of sliding too much on the pull-up bar? So yeah, it can be. I mean, if your hand is just always moving back and forth, you're just creating friction in there, and that's not going to be good. So if you can keep your hands solid during the pull-up phase, that's going to probably significantly reduce the amount of tearing or likelihood of tearing. You can also, as you get more comfortable in tune with the rhythm of, doing pull-ups, especially like kipping, plenty of people can almost like adjust their hands during a set of pull-ups if they feel it getting a little wonky and keep themselves in a good hand position that way. Now that's something that will just come with time, probably not something you want to start out with. I don't want anybody letting go of the pull-up bar and falling off the pull-up bar. But also a large part of whether you tear or don't tear, not only is the hand movement, but then it's also just your callus maintenance on your hands, making sure that your calluses are nice and trimmed down because you think if you do have a callus that's starting to grow and protrude and extend a little bit from your palm, well, that's the high point. Now you've got this high point that has more, contact or more tension against the bar. And now if your hand is also moving, it's just going to irritate that unshaved or untaken care of callus, and that's most likely where you're going to rip. So hands being dry, chalk is your friend, hands not moving around on the bar, and then taking care of your calluses all should ideally help that. JP, we've done 3 squat workouts in the last 3 weeks. We did the 7x1 back squat, the hang squat clean EMOM, and we had the monthly fitness test. The hang squat cleans was such a fun workout. I'm glad that you liked it. Man, a lot of people absolutely loved that hang squat clean EMOM. That will have to make a return. I know they were all different workouts with different stimuluses, but can you talk through thought process behind it? How did you decide the singles worked so closely together versus other months where you might only have one workout with single reps, or is it just a case of classic variance? So I went back and checked that out again. So it was three different weeks, and each one had some variation of a squat in it that also involved a single. And you're right in the fact that that number might have been the same, like a single, but then as you step back as to all the other aspects of that workout, they were quite different, even though singles were involved. And so, also, over the course of each of those 3 weeks, the other workout that week, because usually we'll go below parallel twice a week, the other below parallel workout that week was usually in stark contrast to whatever that workout was that involved singles. And so you get some beautiful variance there. And it wasn't just this single fest. So, for example, 3 weeks ago, we had the back squat 7x1, and then we also had Nancy. So even just there, quite a big difference, right? 7x1 back squat, heavy load, 90% or greater on the barbell, big sets of rest, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes rest between each one of those singles, and you're only doing 7 of them, big rest. And then you had Nancy that week, an overhead squat, 5 sets of 15 reps, 95 pounds on the bar, 65 pounds for women. So higher volume, moderate loading, interference with the run, heck of a breather, muscular stamina. So two below parallel, quite different. That was 3 weeks ago. Then 2 weeks ago, we had that hang squat clean workout that you're talking about, which was every 30 seconds for, it was for 20 minutes, right? Every 30 seconds for 20 minutes, you do one hang squat clean. So yes, it was a single hang squat clean, but at that pace in 20 minutes, you're going to do 40 repetitions over the course of 20 minutes, going every 30 seconds. And as anyone who did it realized, it wasn't just a heavy day at a high heart rate, but there was, well, the high heart rate piece was an understatement. Suddenly your wind felt like you're doing wind sprints. And since you got such small forced rest, you were going on a cadence of every 30 seconds, you weren't able to do like during that 7x1 back squat where we're only going to do 7 lifts on the 7x1 and there's big chunks of rest, 3 to 5 minutes. Well, now in the hang squat clean, you're going to do 40 repetitions and you have to go every 30 seconds. So there's going to be a lot less loading on the bar. So again, even though it's a single, it's wildly different in what the athlete's performance is going to be. It's wildly different in the metabolic hit that's occurring. And one is a power lift with the back squat, and the one is a explosive hip opening with the Olympic lift on the hang squat clean. So quite different there, even though they both had singles in it, so to speak. I mean, even that hang squat clean workout would have been utterly and completely different if instead of every 30 seconds for 20 minutes, it was set up more like the back squat, and it was just 7 by 1 hang squat clean. Now we're taking huge gobs of rest, and there's way more loading on the bar, and you don't have anywhere near the metabolic hit. So quite different. So that was, and that one definitely has to come back. Everyone loved it. That one was paired that week with something quite opposite, which was the Chief. So now the Chief is 5 3-minute AMRAPs, with a minute rest between each one of those. And those 3-minute AMRAPs, you're cycling through multiple rounds of things that had sets of just 9 air squats over and over again. So now we've got no loading in any way, shape, or form, just body weight, sets of 9 over and over and over again. So again, some nice different pairing there. And then finally, the most recent week, or is it the week that we're in? I'm lost right now. It's last week. We had our Linchpin monthly fitness test. So if you're unfamiliar with those, listen to Linchpin Conversations or watch episode 446. It covers all the different 6 Linchpin monthly fitness tests and what they're about. But that was Magic Legs. Now, for Magic Legs, it's kind of a two-parter. Yes, you work up to a heavy single, you rest as needed, and then you do a 20-minute long workout. So you just work up to that heavy single. So that's not a 7 by 1. That's not multiple heavy sets. It doesn't have to be a 1 rep max. It's just you work up to one single lift. What feels heavy today, mark it down. Then for the workout, so that's only one lift. Yes, it's a single. It's only one lift. So it's not a 7 by 1. It's not multiple. It's just a single. Then the bulk of the workout is that 20 minutes now at a moderately heavy load, heavier than you'd like for longer than you want. 20 minutes with an ascending rep scheme. 185 in the bar for the back squat for men, 135 for women, and it's 200-meter run, 10 box jumps, 2 back squats. 200-meter run, 10 box jumps, 4 back squats. You see how this is going. In a 20-minute window, the 200-meter run remains the same, the 10 box jumps remain the same, and each time you come back to the barbell, you increase the reps by 2. So you've got metabolic interference with the running. You've got direct interference with doing 10 box jumps before every time you slide under the barbell. And then every time you slide under the barbell, you have to do more work than you did last time. And you're arguably more tired than you were. Tired, is that even a word? You're more tired than you were previously because you've done more runs, you've done more box jumps, et cetera, et cetera. And it goes 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So even if you got to, let's say, the 10 reps on that, that would have given you um, that's what, 5 rounds? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That would have given you 500 meters of running, 50 box jumps, and then 30 back squats at 185 or 135. So the 30 back squats at 185 or 135 paired with the box jumps and the running, that is, 95% of that day's efforts, and 5% is just that single that you hit before. So the lion's share, don't hold me to those percentages, but the lion's share of that workout is not the single. The lion's share is what occurs in the 20 minutes. So yes, even though there was a single, I wouldn't kind of put it in there with the other ones. And they've all been quite different from that 7 by 1 back squat, going every 30 seconds with the hang squat clean, and then just work up to the heavy single, hit the 20 minutes on that deal. And if you get into the round of 12, then you get in 42 back squats at that particular loading, whatever it happened to be. And then um, the other end of that week's below parallel, not to have a spoiler alert, but that's going to be, what was it now? 5 sets of 20 on reverse lunges. Okay, so now we're doing something, again, quite different with a lot of variance as well. Single leg and reverse instead of forward. So it should be a nice kind of mix there. Okay. One more question, and then we'll do the VO2 Max um, read for all of you who actually are super nerds and want to hang around. From Deborah F. I know that I'm supposed to have a solid base of strict pull-ups before I try kipping, and at least part of the reason is to protect my shoulders. Does this extend to other kipping movements as well? For example, is it safe for me to kip toes to bar if I can't do strict pull-ups yet? Cool question. Answer. Um,
because these each athlete is a little bit different. What would be my major concern with somebody kipping away on pull-ups before they have developed the strict strength, and especially the grip strength as well, is that some people have just explosive hip capacity, and they're going to get up over the bar and lose their ability to hold on to the bar, come back down, fly off the bar. That's not any good. Also, the strengthening of the shoulder, the lats, the chest, and everything that you mentioned previously, yes, we want that as well. Now, with the toes to bar, you're not getting your chin up over the bar in that wild kind of a motion that you would be with a kipping pull-up, but you are still using momentum to help get your toes to the bar. One of my major concerns as to whether or not for you, Deborah, I would say that it is or is not safe, is just your grip strength and then your self-restraint or self-awareness would be a good way to put it. Meaning, do you have decent, solid grip strength to maintain safe hold of that bar during kipping toes to bar, even though you don't have a strict pull-up yet? If so, and then you had good awareness of self and self-restraint to be paying attention to your grip, because maybe again, your ability to kip is stronger than your grip strength, and you're going to try to, not you, but somebody might try to hold on for two or three extra toes to bar to finish this round before they go on to the next one, and their grip is just starting to slip on the pull-up bar, but they want to get a couple more reps, and then all of a sudden they're on their back on the ground, and that's not any good. So that would be the primary thing that I would want to ensure didn't happen to you or any other athlete. So pay attention to your grip strength, and then knowledge of self, and then continue to work towards that strict pull-up. You should be good to go. Okay, are we on to the reading is wonderful? I think we are. Reading is wonderful. Okay, here we go. Ready?
So, this question is from Blake B. Thoughts on VO2 Max? Overall importance, specific accessory work for it, seems as if genetics might limit it as well. Just a topic that has piqued my interest lately. And I think other people will be piqued by it as well. So here we go. What I would recommend is for people to, there's a whole lot of literature out there, but there's a great CrossFit Journal article on this topic that was written a while ago. I have it right here. I printed it out this morning. Boom. This is CrossFit Journal article. This is issue number 52. This is from December 2006, so almost 20 years ago. And it is entitled VO2 Max, Not the Gold Standard with a question mark. So I'm sure that you could find an article that takes a different stance than this. I'm aware of that. All I will tell you is, after being in this game for a while, this article, much more articulately than I could, summarizes what has been my experience as well. And so, if you'd like to listen, this will probably only take 3 to 5 minutes. If you're bored, you can check out. Have a good day. So, here we go. This is from Tony Leland. In my article on exercise science in last month's CrossFit Journal, I highlighted the difficulty of scientifically determining optimal training methods. Most often, it is coaches working hands on using trial and error methodology that actually pushes science ahead, meaning it's not the laboratory. Eventually, scientists notice that most coaches are doing a particular thing with success, and then they design a study to determine why it's effective. But the coach already knew it was effective because he saw it. Didn't need the study, but it's just how it works. However, coaches' practical, field tested insights and clinical experience don't necessarily translate into the realm of scientific testing and study design. I was recently contacted by a coach working with the Canadian national wrestling team. One of the wrestlers was competing in the 62-kilogram class, but the coaches thought that if he could drop down a weight class, he'd be able to medal at the Olympics. They wanted him to drop down from 62 to 55 kilograms, but realized that he was understandably concerned about how he would perform after dropping over 11% of his body weight. So they wanted him to get a few weight cutting practice trials in before he actually had to do it in competition. He was to act like it was a wrestling meet and cut down for weight at 6 p.m., rehydrate overnight, then go through some physiological fitness tests in the morning. They wanted to see how his body handled the cut down and hopefully give him confidence that he could maintain fitness and perform normal while dropping that much weight. That is where I come in. They wanted me to conduct the morning fitness test at my university. Long lead in, but it's worth it. The tests they wanted to use were VO2 max test, aerobic capacity measured while working at exhaustion on a treadmill or stationary bike, and a wind gait test, a bike test designed to assess both anaerobic pathways. Not a good idea in my book, as those tests do not mirror the performance required by the wrestler in his sport. They would not very effectively test the wrestler's ability to perform at the tasks required for his event, and that was the whole point of the experiment. So, why did they suggest these tests that are clearly not the best to assess the athlete's performance? I think it is because we all have a tendency to work with standards that are universally accepted. Maybe this is why CrossFit is viewed with suspicion by some. It doesn't put much stock in the standard tests for evaluating fitness. How can people compare CrossFit's methods and results with others? How can they evaluate and quantify the fitness it produces? Nobody else uses tests called Fran, Linda, etc. to measure progress, so the unfamiliar is always suspect. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's interesting. Sorry. The VO2 max test on a treadmill or stationary bike measuring gas exchange is considered the gold standard of laboratory tests to assess VO2 max, the conventional measure of aerobic fitness, which is why the wrestling coaches wanted to use it for their athlete. But does it transfer to a wrestling match? Olympic freestyle bouts consist of 3 rounds of 2 minutes each. Wrestling is an exceptionally demanding sport using multiple lines of action, pushes, pulls, and static grips with both the arms and the legs, demanding both cardiovascular endurance and muscular stamina. So, why not assess all of these abilities in one test? You could do three 2 minute rounds of 1 minute of thrusters and then 1 minute of pull ups, like a Fran, or maybe 3 sets of 2 minutes of clean and jerks, like Grace. This would tax the cardiovascular system as well as the muscular strength, power, endurance of the athlete's score would change based upon his fitness. You could also develop a continuous 6 minute test similar to like Fight Gone Bad to cover many of these aspects that would be indicative of the wrestler's VO2 max. To break the testing into VO2 max and a Wingate test doesn't adequately test the demands of the sport. So, okay, long-winded. Read this thing, but basically the entire it's only a 3-page deal, but basically the point is that this test is just a classic measure because it's relatively easy to do, but it's very narrowly focused. He goes on to say in the article that what Greg Glassman used to say during his lectures was true, which is it's very modal specific. So meaning you might have an excellent VO2 max running and not a good VO2 max rowing or biking. The opposite is true. You might have an excellent VO2 max cycling and not a good one running. And again, it's not testing all the other aspects of going into actual well rounded fitness. It's a very tightly defined corridor that is, again, modal specific. And what Greg always used to say, and I didn't get it at the time, but it really rings true now is, so what CrossFit is, what fitness is work capacity across broad time and modal domains. Work capacity, your ability to do work, force times distance over time, whether that work is Fran, that work is more rounds of Cindy, that work is a 5K run, that work is a 1 rep max deadlift, that work is Grace. And those are things that are short, medium, and long. They're light, they're moderate, and they're heavy. They're low interference, they're high interference. You have this astonishing, and they require your ability to process and exchange oxygen. You have to be powerful. You have to have muscular stamina. You have to have all these different attributes, not just one attribute. And it has to be in your lower body and your upper body, and you need coordination, like all of these things if you're doing well-rounded fitness. And if you have an athlete that is doing this well-rounded fitness, and generally speaking, the results are moving in a good direction. Your 5K is getting a little quicker. You got an extra round of Cindy this time. You took 10 seconds off your Fran. You got 5 seconds faster on Grace. Your deadlift went up 3 kilos. Like you got all these different things and they're moving in the right direction. Do you care what your view? Am I back? Am I back here? Okay, I think I'm back. There was like a pause, but I think I'm back now. So what I was going to say is, if all those things are moving in the right direction, do you care what your VO2 max is? So what Greg always used to say is, what's more important to you, your VO2 max or increasing your work capacity across broad time modal domains, aka your fitness? And would you trade one for the other? Would you be like, hey, you know what? Great news. I took a VO2 max test. I take one every year, and my VO2 max improved. How cool is that? My VO2 max improved. Um, I'm weaker on the deadlift. I'm not doing as well on Cindy as I used to. 5K slower. Had my worst Fran ever, and Grace took me twice as long as it used to. But my VO2 max has improved. That doesn't seem like a good trade-off, right? And now let's do the other thing. Hey, you know what? I measured my VO2 max last year and it was whatever. And I measured my VO2 max this year and it's a little worse. My VO2 max is a little worse than what it was last year. But I'm deadlifting more. I'm back squatting more. I just hit a PR on my 5K. I got an extra round in Cindy. I PR'd my Fran, and I got a lifetime PR on Grace. Which would you rather have? Improvement in fitness and using those things as metrics, or the VO2 max? Now, I'm sure like, well, Pat, give me a third option where both happen at the same time. Sure, you can have they both happen at the same time. But the point is, if one's very modal specific and the other one, fitness, covers everything under the sun you actually need to be ferociously fit, fast, and strong, there's probably value in paying more attention to your fitness goals. You want to go get your VO2 max tested? Rock on. But if your goal is fitness, I don't think chasing an improvement in VO2 max is the most effective way to get fitter, faster, and stronger because you have to do so many different things that aren't just modal specific to the one way that's going to be used to test your VO2 max. And and again, like Tony Leland says in the article, it's just one of those things that has become a gold standard because it's been around for a while. It's universally quantifiable and you know, people like the data. But then the question is what you're going to do with the data since it is modal specific. And I've told this story before, and I'll kind of end with it as well, um, which is many, many years ago, we did a seminar at a military unit, top tier unit that, doesn't exist, one of those units. Great people, great guys. We had an awesome time. We did two seminars there, and they had a full, I mean, they have unlimited budget. Genuinely. So they had the most impressive toys, strength and conditioning rooms, all the whiz bang gadgets, gears, tests. I mean, you name it. There's lights bleeping and things flashing, printouts happening and charts. I mean, they had it down. Their cadre of trainers and exercise scientists that they had there weren't big fans of us because we were, the counterculture and all this stuff. But one of their operators wanted us to be there, so we came. And, it was kind of a little bit of, two dogs sniffing around each other. And at one point in time, they wanted to show us all these things that they had, and they made it a point to be like, look, for all of our operators, we've tested their VO2 max, and we know what their VO2 max is, and we're going to test it again in a while. And here's all their data posted here. We've got our VO2 maxes. Do you know your athletes' VO2 maxes? And I might be misquoting a little bit, but Greg Glassman, God bless him, said something along the lines of like, cool. So you've got their VO2 max, like anyone can test their VO2 max. My question is, how are you specifically going to use that data to make them better at their job? Because that's what matters. So tell me how you're going to do that and how it relates to VO2 max. And they had no response to that. And that I thought was very telling. So take it for what it's worth. You know, is it a true story? Yes, it's true in that it is a story. If you can name what movie that's from, you get extra points. And other than that, uh, yeah, it's Thursday. It's a rest day. Have a great day, everybody. I don't know why the thing cut out there, but hopefully everyone stuck around. I'm going to enjoy my rest day, keep being cool to one another, and we'll talk later.